Winter gardening scares a lot of people, especially in an unheated hoop house. But with the right cold hardy crops and frost blankets, this 10 by 12 becomes a surprisingly productive winter garden. This is a winter-specific planting plan for Zone 8A, using nothing but cold hardy transplants and frost cloth inside a 10 by 12 hoop house. Everything we're planting today survives freezes, grows slowly but steadily all winter, and rebounds fast in February as the daylight returns. Today we will learn how to build a winter square foot layout, what crops will actually survive winter without heat, how to place them into cool, moderate, and warm microclimates, how we planned out our hobby hoop house, how frost blankets give you a 10 to 12 degree buffer, and how to manage winter humidity and airflow. Winter sunlight is low and there's less daylight, so we're going to use every advantage of this hobby hoop house in a square foot layout. Hoop houses help to buffer the frost and wind, and when it's really cold, we can cover the crops overnight with frost blankets to help create a warmer microclimate. Tight spacing helps to protect the neighboring plants and retains moisture. Understanding microclimates in the layout lets you position crops where they can perform the best. It's the perfect system for HOAs, small yards, and no heat setups. But in our hobby hoop house, there's 120 square foot of usable plant space. In ours, we have a central walkway which creates 4 planting zones. In this diagram, the north is on the left side, where the door is. That is going to give us our coolest spots. And on the right side end wall, that should give us our warmest section. It's on the south side. The entire planting plan follows these microclimates. 3 to 4 days before we plant these outside in our hobby house, we're going to set them inside the hoop house to harden off. Now we're going to set up our soil for winter. We're going to remove summer vegetation, crops that have died out, and crops that aren't performing well. We're going to cut back our herbs and give them a chance to come back again. We're going to pull the weeds, and we're going to top dress with compost. This season, avoid peat-heavy mixes as they tend to stay too cold and wet in the winter. Consider adding coco coir and perlite to help aerate the soil. Now we're going to start our grid setup and mark our 1x1 squares with string. This just gives us our guide for planting. This helps us with airflow and prevent overcrowding, as we have a visual spacing guide as we plant. We're going to consider as we deploy and take off our frost blanket that we allow space to do that as well. Using the grid also helps us avoid overplanting. Let's take a look at our winter crops and their cold hardiness. We'll start with extremely hardy brassicas. Kale, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts can all take down to 10 degrees Fahrenheit in our zone of 8A. Frost blanket will help all of these crops avoid frostburn. We're also planting jo choi, a baby bok choy, which can take a cold hardiness down to 20 degrees. We'll use a thicker frost blanket for these types of crops. We'll also use that thicker frost blanket for our next category of very hardy leafy greens. Romaine lettuce, arugula, and rainbow chard can all also take down to 20 degree hardiness. For our winter hardy herbs, we're going to plant flat leaf Italian parsley and cilantro. The parsley is a plant that we had in the summer that we're going to cut back now to give it another chance. We're also going to leave these onions and plant leeks in addition, which can go down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. For our strong, hardy roots, we're going to be transplanting beets, which can go down to 15 degrees with a frost blanket. Red cloud is an Asian green in the tatsoi family and can survive to about 10 degrees with a frost blanket. Now we're going to use our squares as our spacing guide for these winter crops. At 1 per square, we will plant kale, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, jo choi, rainbow chard, and romaine. At 4 per square, we'll plant parsley, cilantro, and beets. At 9 per square, we are going to try out a spicy spring mix. Let's talk about irrigation and ventilation in the winter. Use drip irrigation. Water sparingly as the soil stays wet in the winter. Vent midday with roll-up sides or vents or scissor doors to reduce humidity. Close the house up before sunset. With higher humidity, you have a greater mildew risk, so make sure you airflow daily. Just because it's winter doesn't mean you don't need to be on the lookout for pests. So scout for aphids, cabbage loopers, and slugs. Check in the mid-morning when the leaves are dry. As you harvest these crops, you can transplant with new ones. You may need to top off with compost as you do this. For our hobby hoop house, here's how we're planting our 56 squares. We're planting all 56 squares using winter microclimates. North side is the coldest, south side is the warmest, and the top and bottom rows get the strongest winter sun. Every crop goes into the pocket where it will perform the best. On the north side, the coolest zone, we've got kale, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, parsley, cilantro, and leeks. In the center stable zone, we have romaine, rainbow chard, and jo choi. In the south, the warmest zone, we have beets, red cloud, and arugula. If you want to see how these crops do for us over the winter, make sure you like, subscribe, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and tell us down below in the comments, what are you going to be growing for this winter?